Quinn O'Hara didn't have time to think. He just stepped in front of the yelling man, holding his daughter tighter as he set down the grocery bag that had ripped open at their feet. "Back off," Quinn said, his voice low but steady. The man in the expensive coat, red in the face, fists clenched, glared at him. "This isn't your business." "She said no," Quinn said, standing between the man and the woman, who looked like she was trying hard not to flinch. "That makes it my business." The woman blinked in surprise, like she hadn't expected anyone to defend her. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. "You don't know who I am," the man growled. "I don't care who you are," Quinn replied. The man took a step forward, but Quinn didn't budge. In his arms, little Olive clutched his sweatshirt, her big brown eyes wide. The woman finally found her voice. "Liam, leave, now." A few people on the sidewalk had stopped to watch. The man Liam looked around, jaw tight. He hissed something under his breath, then turned on his heel and walked off. Quinn let out a breath once he was gone, then turned to the woman. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think so." "Good," he said, crouching down to pick up the spilled groceries with one hand. "Sorry about the scene." He seemed like he wasn't hearing you." "No, you were right," she said quickly. She bent down to help him. "Thank you, really." "You shouldn't have to thank someone for that," he said, stuffing a loaf of bread back into the torn bag. "You said no." "That should have been enough." She looked at him, really looked at him this time. He was wearing old jeans, a hoodie that had seen better days, and sneakers that were probably older than Olive. But his eyes were warm, steady, protective. "I'm Quinn," he added. "And this is Olive." Olive gave a shy wave from where she was still tucked under Quinn's arm. "I'm Brielle," she said. "Brielle Rivers." Quinn didn't blink at the name, didn't recognize it, and for some reason that made Brielle's chest ache a little. "Well, Brielle," Quinn said, adjusting Olive on his hip, "you want to get a coffee or something? Just to breathe for a second. I know a spot around the corner. It's quiet." Brielle hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Yeah. I could use that." They walked to the little cafe tucked between a laundromat and a flower shop, a place with cracked tile floors and chipped mugs. Quinn ordered a hot chocolate for Olive, black coffee for himself, and let Brielle get whatever she wanted without looking at the cost. She noticed that they sat at a booth by the window, Olive sipping her drink while Quinn handed her a crayon and a napkin to draw on. "So," he said, glancing at Brielle, "are you?" "All right, I mean that guy, he your ex, unfortunately," she said, rubbing her temple. "I ended it months ago." "He doesn't take no easily. He ever hurt you?" "No," she said quickly. "But he scares me sometimes. He's intense, controlling. I kept trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes the benefit of the doubt makes you stay longer than you should," Quinn said softly. "I get that," she looked at him. "You do," he shrugged. "My ex walked out when Olive was 4. I kept thinking maybe she'd come back, that maybe she just needed time, but some people don't change." Brielle's expression softened. "How long ago?" 3 years, he said. "It's been just us since. That's tough." "Yeah, but Olive's worth it, every second." Brielle glanced down at the little girl who was now drawing a purple cat. "She's beautiful." "She is," he said, pride in his voice. "She saved me, honestly." Brielle didn't know why, but that hit her hard. Maybe it was the way he said it, like it wasn't dramatic, just truth. "You're a good dad," Quinn chuckled. "I try. I burn half the dinners I make, and I can't braid hair to save my life, but she's alive and happy, so I'm calling that a win." Brielle laughed, a real one this time. She hadn't laughed like that in months. They talked for over an hour, about everything, and nothing. He didn't know she ran a company that grossed over $300 million a year, that her office overlooked Central Park, that her last board meeting had nearly sparked a takeover bid. He just saw her, listened, and it felt nice when they walked outside. The sky was turning pink with evening. "I should get her home," Quinn said, glancing at Olive, who was yawning now. "Of course," Brielle said. "Thank you again." "Anytime." He hesitated. "You need anything, like if that guy shows up again you can call me." She blinked. "You didn't give me your number." "Oh, right." He pulled a receipt from his pocket and scribbled on the back of it. "Here," she smiled, folding it into her coat. "Thanks, Quinn." She turned to go, but then paused. "Hey, what do you do? For work, I mean." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I do handyman stuff, construction when I can get it. Nothing fancy." She nodded slowly. "Well, you're good at more important things." He smiled at that. "Take care, Brielle. You too." She watched him walk away with Olive nestled against his shoulder, her little fingers tangled in his hoodie string, and for reasons she couldn't explain, her chest felt warm. Back at her penthouse, she pulled the receipt from her coat and stared at the messy handwriting. She didn't know why it felt different, why she felt different, but she did, and she wasn't going to ignore it. Brielle stood at the edge of the conference room, arms folded as her executive team filtered out, murmuring to each other about market repositioning and quarterly projections. She barely heard them. Her eyes were fixed on the skyline beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the fading sun casting streaks of orange across the glass towers. She should have been thinking about the merger proposal waiting on her desk, but instead, her thoughts kept circling back to a man in worn jeans and a hoodie, balancing a child on his hip like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're somewhere else," Iris said, stepping up beside her. Her assistant, efficient and impossible to fool, held her tablet like a shield. "And it's not the quarterly numbers." Brielle turned her head slightly. "How do you always know you're not pacing, so it's not business, and your coffee's gone cold?" "That only happens when your brain is somewhere it probably shouldn't be." Brielle gave a small laugh, but it faded quickly. "I met someone." Iris blinked. Met someone?" He stepped in when Liam cornered me outside a grocery store. Iris's expression darkened. "Again, he won't let go," Brielle muttered. "But Quinn, he didn't even hesitate, just put himself between us like it was instinct." "Quinn," Iris repeated. "That his first or last name?" "I don't know," Brielle admitted. "He didn't ask what I did, didn't look at me like I was a headline. He just talked to me like I was a person." Iris tapped her tablet. "Want me to run a background check?" "No," Brielle said quickly. "At least not yet." Iris raised an eyebrow. "You trust him?" "I don't know if I trust him," Brielle said. "But I want to see him again." Later that evening, Brielle ditched the town car and took a cab to the address Quinn had scribbled on that crumpled receipt. She stared at the building from the sidewalk, an aging brick walk-up with rusted railings and a flickering hallway light barely visible through the glass door. It was nothing like her world of marble lobbies and concierge desks, but it grounded her in a way she hadn't expected. She climbed the stairs, careful not to let her heels echo too loudly. The third-floor hallway smelled faintly of fresh paint and something vaguely citrusy, probably a neighbor cleaning. She found the door with the peeling numbers and knocked. It took a moment. Then it opened a crack and a sleepy-eyed Olive peeked out from behind it, her hair a tousled halo. "You came back," she said, voice small. "Hi there," Brielle said gently. "Is your dad home?" Olive turned her head and called out without moving from the doorway. "Daddy." "The pretty lady's here." The door opened wider and Quinn appeared, towel slung over one shoulder, a screwdriver tucked into his waistband. "I wasn't expecting," he started. "I know, I hope it's okay," Brielle said. "I just thought I'd return the favor, you helped me." "Maybe I can help you." He glanced around the hallway. "With what?" She lifted a small basket from her arm. "Dinner, I brought something." He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." She entered the apartment and took in the mismatched furniture, the books stacked against the wall, the half-repaired cabinet door leaning near the sink. The space was lived in, cluttered but warm. "You didn't have to do this," Quinn said, closing the door behind her. "I wanted to," she said. "You said you burn half your dinners. I figured I'd test the other half's luck." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was just trying to keep her from eating cereal again." Brielle set the food on the small table and caught Olive watching her from behind a couch cushion. "Do you like spaghetti?" Brielle asked her. Olive nodded slowly. "Only if there's cheese." "I brought cheese," Brielle said, lifting a small container with a grin. Quinn helped clear a spot at the table, pushing aside a pile of mail and a jar of screws. "Sorry about the mess, I was fixing that cabinet again." "You're handy," she said, watching him move. He was focused, efficient, like someone used to doing things himself. "Try to be," he said. "Can't afford to hire anyone." She didn't say anything, just began unpacking the containers. They ate together, Olive chatting between bites about her school's upcoming art day and the class hamster that escaped once and was found inside a boot. Brielle listened, laughed, and found herself genuinely enjoying the evening in a way that felt unfamiliar. After dinner, Quinn poured them both tea, just hot water and a few old bags he dug out of the back of a cupboard. "So," he said, settling into the chair across from her, "what do you do, Brielle?" She paused, stirring her tea slowly. "I work in corporate strategy. It's mostly meetings and spreadsheets. Sounds important. It keeps me busy." He studied her for a moment. "You don't look like someone who blends into a spreadsheet." She met his gaze. "Neither do you." There was a quiet beat between them. "You didn't have to bring dinner," he said softly. "I know," she replied, "but I wanted to see you again, and Olive." His eyes flicked to his daughter, who was now curled up on the couch with one of her picture books, eyelids drooping. Brielle leaned forward slightly. "I don't usually do this." "Neither do I," he said. She opened her mouth to say something else, but his phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, frowning. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just a guy from a job site wants me to check something tomorrow. It's a side gig." "Pays under the table. You take a lot of those." "When I can," he said. "I've got a list of things she needs. Glasses, shoes, school stuff. It adds up." Brielle nodded slowly. "I get that." He looked at her a moment longer, then said, "You're not just corporate, are you?" "I'm not sure what I am at the moment," she said honestly. He smiled at that. "Well, whoever you are, Olive likes you." "That's rare." That warmth bloomed again in her chest, but this time it was edged with a kind of ache she wasn't used to. Because for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was performing for anyone. "Would it be all right," she said carefully, "if I saw you both again sometime?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Yeah, I think we'd like that." She stood, gathering her coat. He walked her to the door, Olive now fully asleep, a blanket tucked around her. "Good night, Quinn." "Night, Brielle." She stepped out into the hallway, her heart racing in a way that had nothing to do with elevators or skyscrapers or boardrooms, and everything to do with a man who looked at her like she was just a woman, not a title, not a trophy, just her. The next time Brielle saw Quinn, it wasn't planned. She'd just finished a brutal investor call that ended with her calmly shutting down an attempted power grab, only to stand in front of the mirror in her private office and realize she looked like someone who hadn't slept in 2 days. Her lipstick was flawless, her heels sharp, her hair controlled within an inch of her life, but her reflection felt like a stranger, so she left. No driver, no assistant, just her and the city. She didn't know where she was going until she looked up and saw the community center's weathered sign. It was a squat brick building covered in graffiti tags and flyers for lost pets and food drives. She'd passed it a dozen times. But today, something made her stop. Inside, the air smelled faintly of mop water and old paper. The receptionist barely glanced at her as she walked past the scuffed linoleum into a wide hall where voices and laughter echoed. Children were painting at folding tables, and adults were repairing worn furniture in the back corner. She froze when she saw him. Quinn was crouched beside a rickety bookshelf, adjusting the frame with a rubber mallet. He wore a thick flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, his forearms dusted with sawdust. Olive sat a few feet away with a small group of kids, glue stick in hand, constructing what looked like a cardboard castle. He hadn't noticed her yet. "Are you here to volunteer or to supervise?" came a voice beside her. She turned to see an older woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. "Neither," Brielle replied, caught off guard. The woman smiled. "Then you're probably here for someone." "Go on." Brielle crossed the room slowly, careful not to interrupt the kids. When she reached him, he looked up and his expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable. "Hey," he said, standing. "Hi," she answered. "I didn't know you helped out here. Just started a few weeks ago." They needed someone to fix things, and Olive likes the art program. It gives her time with other kids. Brielle folded her arms. "You didn't mention it. You didn't ask." She glanced at the shelf he was working on. "That about to fall apart." "Not anymore," he said, brushing sawdust from his hands. "What brings you here?" "I needed air, ended up walking, saw the sign." He raised a brow. "You walked, I can walk," she said, a little too defensively. "I didn't say you couldn't." "Just surprised." She looked around. "You do this often?" "Every Saturday, sometimes Wednesdays, depends on the jobs I'm juggling." "Why?" she asked. He shrugged. "Place needed help, so I help." She didn't speak for a moment. Then, "Do you ever do anything just for yourself?" He looked at her then. Really looked. "Helping people helps me." She opened her mouth, but Olive spotted her and ran over, arms outstretched. "You came again," Olive said, flinging herself into Brielle's legs. Brielle bent to hug her. "I did." "That castle looks like it could survive a dragon. It's gonna have a moat," Olive whispered. "Well, obviously, every real castle needs one." Quinn watched them, something unreadable in his gaze. He hadn't expected her to show up again. "Not here, not like this." "You hungry?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "What?" "They'll be serving chili in the back in a few minutes. It's not gourmet, but it's real." Brielle hesitated. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not. Come on." They walked together to the back room where a few volunteers served from slow cookers. Brielle accepted a paper bowl and a plastic spoon, ignoring the curious glances from the others. She sat with Quinn and Olive at a folding table covered in a vinyl tablecloth with faded cartoon bees. "I haven't eaten chili from a paper bowl since college," she said. "You went to college, Stanford." He raised an eyebrow. "Of course you did." She looked at him. "What about you?" "Didn't finish," he said. "Life got complicated." She didn't ask more. Something in his voice told her not to. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Olive piped up. "Daddy, can Brielle come to the library with us on Sunday?" Quinn glanced at Brielle. "We go to this used bookstore downtown. They've got story time." "Only if she wants to," he added. "I'd love to," Brielle said without hesitation. After the meal, she helped gather the empty bowls and throw them away. One of the volunteers offered her a towel to wipe down the tables, and she took it. It wasn't hard. It just wasn't something anyone had asked her to do in years. When she turned back around, Quinn was watching her with an expression she couldn't place. "What? You don't flinch," he said. "Should I? Most people in your shoes would." She tilted her head. "What shoes do you think I wear?" He looked at her for a long moment. "The kind that usually stay on marble floors." She didn't answer. Instead, she picked up Olive's jacket from a nearby chair and handed it to her. "You cold?" she asked. "Only my ears," Olive said. "I'll bring earmuffs next time." The girl's eyes lit up. "Pink ones?" "Of course." They left the center together. The sun had already dipped behind the buildings and the wind had sharpened. Brielle hadn't brought gloves, but she didn't say anything. Quinn walked beside her in silence until they reached the crosswalk. "You sure you're okay walking back?" he asked. "I'll catch a cab," she said. Eventually, he studied her. "You don't talk much about yourself." She met his gaze. "Neither do you." He gave a low, dry laugh. "Fair enough." They stood there for a beat longer. The light changed. "See you Sunday?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, Sunday." Brielle bent to kiss Olive's forehead, then straightened and looked at Quinn. "Don't cancel on me," she said. "I won't." She crossed the street without looking back. But halfway down the block, she exhaled and pulled her phone from her coat. "I need you to cancel my Sunday brunch with the board," she told Iris when she picked up. "Tell them something came up." "Something?" Iris asked. "Yes," Brielle said. "Something better." The bookstore on Sunday was tucked beneath a weathered awning, its windows fogged from the warmth inside. The bell above the door jingled as Brielle stepped in, the scent of old pages and cinnamon mixing with the faint sound of a man reading aloud in the back. She spotted Olive first, legs folded beneath her on a beanbag, listening with rapt attention. Quinn leaned against a nearby shelf, arms crossed loosely, his gaze flicking to Brielle the moment she walked through the door. "You made it," he said, walking over. "I said I would," she replied. "And I brought the earmuffs." She handed him the soft, pastel pair she'd found in a boutique on Lexington. They weren't flashy, but they were lined in fleece and small enough to fit Olive's head. "Pink and fuzzy," he said, inspecting them. "She's going to lose her mind." "I figured she'd like them." He looked at her, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. "You always figure people out this fast." "Only when I like them," she said. Quinn didn't answer, but his posture shifted, and the air between them thickened slightly. After story time, the three of them wandered through the aisles. Olive clutched a battered copy of a fairy tale collection, flipping pages as she walked. Quinn carried her coat and hat under one arm. "Do you always read this much?" Brielle asked Olive. "Only the good stuff," Olive said without looking up. "No boring books." Quinn leaned in. "Her definition of boring includes anything with too many facts. Facts are for grown-ups," Olive said, then turned a corner and disappeared down another aisle. Brielle's chuckle faded as she turned to Quinn. "You're good with her," he shrugged. She makes it easy most days. I meant it, she continued. You're a better father than most men I've met who had every resource in the world. He tilted his head. You've met a lot of men with resources. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, he studied her for a second. I've been trying not to ask, but I'm starting to wonder just how different our lives really are. They're very different, she said plainly. You hiding a husband in a mansion somewhere. No husband, she said. But the mansion part isn't far off. He blinked, then slowly crossed his arms. All right, let's hear it. I'm the CEO of Rivers and Holt. His face didn't change right away. Then wait, that's your name, Rivers. As in the Rivers behind the tech firm that's everywhere right now. I built the company with my brother. He passed away 3 years ago. I've been running it alone since. Quinn's jaw flexed. So you're not just successful. You're the kind of successful that makes people rewrite their tax plans. I wasn't hiding it. I just liked that you didn't know. He looked away for a moment, then back. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything, she said. You're a billionaire. Technically, she replied, I'm a little under that, but not by much. He let out a low breath. And you've been spending your weekends with a guy who rehabs broken cabinets for gas money. She stepped closer. I've also been spending them with a man who protects strangers without thinking, raises a daughter with more patience than I thought existed, and doesn't care about what I have, only who I am. He didn't speak for a moment. I'm not intimidated by what you do, he finally said. But I don't want to be a novelty or some charity case. You're not, and I wouldn't be here if I thought for a second that's what this was. He looked at her carefully. You're sure about that? I am. They both turned as Olive came running back, waving her book. Can we take this one home? Quinn rubbed the back of his neck. We'll have to check the price, kiddo. Brielle crouched beside Olive. May I see it? She handed it over. Brielle flipped to the inside cover, scanning the sticker. It's already marked down, she said, then looked at Quinn. Let me get it. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off. Please, let me do this one thing. He gave a slow nod. They left the bookstore together, Olive swinging her bag with the book inside. The wind had picked up again. Quinn helped Olive into her earmuffs, securing them carefully over her ears. She looks like a snowflake, Brielle said. She looks warm, he replied, which is what matters. They walked a few blocks until Olive stopped in front of a toy shop window, her breath fogging the glass. Inside, a carousel of plush animals spun under soft lights. Can we look? She asked. Quinn hesitated. We don't have time today, sweetheart. Brielle crouched beside Olive again. How about we come back next weekend, just to look? Promise, Olive whispered. Pinky swear. Back at the apartment, Quinn invited her in without hesitation. Olive curled up in her favorite chair with her new book while Brielle and Quinn stood in the kitchen. I've got something else to say, she said, voice low. He leaned against the counter. I'm listening. I've been offered a chance to expand the company overseas. It would mean relocating, temporarily. He said nothing. But I don't want to go, she continued. Not because I'm afraid, not because I can't. But because for the first time in a long time, I've found something that isn't about power or control or success. She stepped closer. I've found you. He looked at her, eyes dark and steady. I don't have anything to offer you, Brielle. No penthouse, no private jet. Just a kid who likes fairy tales and a man who's still figuring things out. I don't want a penthouse, she said. I want dinners at this table. I want to fix that cabinet with you. I want to read bedtime stories and walk through bookstores and never wonder if someone's pretending with me. He reached out, slid a hand to her waist. I'm not pretending, he said. Good, she replied. Because I'm not either, he kissed her then. Not hurried, not hesitant, just certain. When they pulled apart, Olive wrinkled her nose from the couch. Do grown-ups always do that? Quinn turned, laughing. Sometimes. Good, she said, but only sometimes. Brielle laughed, her chest light. Months later, the cabinet finally stayed shut. Olive's bookshelf overflowed. The toy shop window became a weekend tradition. And the woman who once measured success in stock prices found something far rarer. Love that asked for nothing but truth and gave everything in return. Rain painted steady streaks against the windows of Quinn's apartment, softening the city into a watercolor blur. Inside, the floor was scattered with colored pencils, half-finished drawings, and a stack of books Olive had insisted on organizing by princess importance. She was at the kitchen table now, tongue poking out in concentration as she tried to trace a unicorn from a sticker sheet onto a napkin. Quinn stood by the sink, drying his hands. She's been quieter than usual today. Brielle glanced over from the couch. She's waiting. For what? For what we're going to say. He turned. About, she closed the book in her lap and stood. About everything changing. Quinn leaned against the counter, arms folded. You still thinking about the expansion? I turned it down, she said, his brow lifted. You didn't tell me. I wanted to be sure, she said, walking toward him. I've spent years building something I thought would matter more than anything else. But it turns out it's not the building that matters, it's who you build it with. Quinn glanced toward Olive. And what does that look like, Brielle? Something new, she said. Not just me showing up on weekends or you fitting your life around mine. I want a home, with both of you. He was quiet for a long moment. I'm not used to being someone's choice, he said. You're not my choice, she replied. You're my future. Olive looked up. Are you guys getting married or what? Quinn blinked. That's a pretty big leap. Brielle turned, kneeling beside Olive. Would you be okay with that, as long as I get a dress too, Olive said. And cake, Quinn laughed. You'd marry us for cake and a tiara. He looked at Brielle. She drives a hard bargain. Brielle stood again, her eyes steady. I meant it. I want to build something real, with you. I don't have a ring, he said. Then don't propose, just say yes. His voice was quiet. Yes. The following weeks unfolded in a rhythm that felt both new and deeply familiar. Brielle moved into a brownstone in Brooklyn, a far cry from her penthouse, but it had wide windows, creaky floors, and a backyard no bigger than a parking space. Olive called it the castle. Quinn refinished the kitchen cabinets. Brielle planted herbs in the windowsill. Olive adopted a gerbil named Queenie, who promptly escaped twice before Quinn built a custom enclosure with a lock. On a crisp morning in early spring, they stood in the public garden near the bookstore where it had all begun. There were only a handful of people, no press, no photographers, no board members. Quinn wore a navy jacket, his hair combed for once. Olive stood between them in a pale pink dress, holding a basket of wildflowers she'd picked herself. Brielle wore a tea-length gown with sleeves that whispered against her skin as she moved. You sure about this? Quinn asked under his breath. I've never been more sure of anything, she said. The officiant smiled. You may now exchange vows. Brielle took a breath. You stepped between me and a man who wouldn't hear me, and you've been standing beside me ever since. I spent my life building walls to keep people out, but you and Olive walked right through them. I don't want to be behind walls anymore. I want to be home, with you. Quinn took her hands. I thought I needed to be more, richer, smarter, something else. But you never asked me to change, you just saw me, and I don't know how I got lucky enough to be seen by you. But I'll spend my life showing you what it means to be loved. They kissed as Olive threw wildflowers into the wind like confetti. The petals caught in Brielle's hair, and Quinn laughed as she batted them away. Later that night, they curled up on the couch, Olive asleep between them, her tiara still askew on her head. The house smelled of lavender and something sweet from the bakery box Brielle had brought home. Quinn brushed a strand of hair from Brielle's face. You never asked me how I ended up a single dad. I figured you'd tell me when it mattered. She got scared, he said. Didn't think she could do it. She walked out one night and never came back. I kept thinking maybe she would. But by the time I stopped looking at the door, Olive had already filled that space. Brielle nodded. You don't need to explain. You've already shown me everything that matters. He rested his head against hers. You don't miss that world you left behind, she looked at him. I didn't leave it. I just stopped letting it define me. In the months that followed, Brielle continued to lead her company, but her office now had finger paintings and a photo of Olive with Queenie perched on her shoulder. She started a foundation for single parents, funded quietly through anonymous channels. She never wanted it to be about her name. Quinn launched a small business custom renovations, mostly word of mouth. Brielle helped him set up the website, but he insisted on writing the About page himself. It began with, We fix what matters. On Olive's 8th birthday, they threw a garden party in the backyard. Balloons drifted into the sky and the cake had far too much frosting. As the sun dipped low and fairy lights flickered on, Quinn pulled Brielle close while Olive danced barefoot in the grass. "You know what I think," Brielle whispered. "What? We didn't fall in love. No, we walked into it. One step at a time, and we never looked back," Quinn smiled. "Then let's keep walking." They kissed as Olive twirled nearby, her laughter rising into the twilight. And for the first time in a life filled with boardrooms and bottom lines, Brielle didn't feel like she was chasing anything, because everything she'd ever wanted was already here.